The golden lights of the presidential palace in Ouagadougou flickered gently in the evening air. Inside the grand dining hall, the scent of freshly cooked rice, fried chicken, and spiced vegetables filled the air. President Ibrahim Traoré sat at the head of the long table, surrounded by trusted advisors. It had been a long day, but tonight was supposed to be a small celebration. The 32nd successful project under his leadership was nearing completion. "The water project in the northern region is ready, Mr. President," said Economy Minister Calaboy, glancing at his notes with a proud smile. "The villagers are eagerly awaiting your visit." Traoré nodded, exhaustion visible in his eyes. "It's the 32nd of 50. We're making good progress," he said, lifting a forkful of rice and fried chicken to his mouth. The first bite had barely passed his lips when a searing burn shot down his throat. He froze, the fork clattering onto his plate. The room stilled. A sudden crushing pressure squeezed his chest. His vision blurred into a fog of lights and faces. "Mr. President, are you all right?" asked Interior Minister Kabore, his voice cutting through the rising panic. Traoré tried to answer, but his words tangled and stuck. His hand reached for his glass of water but trembled violently, knocking it over. Gasps filled the room. "The president has been poisoned!" someone shouted. Instantly, chaos erupted. Guards surged into the room, weapons drawn. Advisors stood in shock. Ouedraogo, the chief of security, barked sharp orders. "Seal the palace, no one enters, no one leaves," he commanded. Dr. Zongo, the palace's chief physician, arrived moments later. He knelt by Traoré, checking his pulse and pupils. His face hardened. "It's chemical poisoning. We have minutes, maybe less. Get him to the hospital now." In a blur of shouting and running feet, Traoré was stretchered into a waiting armored vehicle. The convoy sped through the deserted streets of Ouagadougou, sirens wailing into the night. At the Burkina Faso Central Military Hospital, a secure wing was prepared. Armed soldiers lined the corridors. Machines beeped urgently as doctors fought to stabilize the president. Meanwhile, news of the attack exploded across social media. Crowds gathered outside the hospital, lighting candles and chanting prayers. The #sign, Pray for Traoré, trended worldwide. "Western powers did this," shouted some protesters. "No, traitors inside the palace," countered others. While the world speculated inside the sterile corridors of the hospital, Burkina Faso's young leader hovered between life and death. And deep within the palace walls, a sinister plot remained hidden, waiting to be uncovered. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor hummed lowly as Prime Minister Dio, Security Chief Ouedraogo, and Interior Minister Kabore huddled together, faces grim. "We must act quickly," Dio said, voice tense. "If this poison came from inside, we cannot trust anyone in the palace." Ouedraogo nodded grimly. "But who can we trust then?" There was a long silence. Then Kabore spoke, almost reluctantly. "Maurice Sankara." The others stared at him. "You want to bring back the man Traoré imprisoned for treason?" Dio asked incredulously. "Exactly because of that," Kabore replied. "He has no love for Traoré. If he finds the truth, it will be for the country, not for him." After a brief but heated debate, they agreed. A convoy was dispatched to the suburbs of Ouagadougou, where Sankara lived under surveillance. Maurice Sankara sat in his modest home, listening to the radio. The news of Traoré's poisoning was everywhere. A knock came at the door. Two stern-faced officers greeted him. "Mr. Sankara, the Prime Minister requests your presence." Without a word, Sankara grabbed his coat. He had been expecting this. At the hospital, Dio, Ouedraogo, and Kabore awaited him. They offered tense handshakes. Sankara refused them. "Did I have a choice?" he said, voice dripping with bitterness. "The country needs you," Dio said firmly. "The country," Sankara mused. "Not Traoré." "Someone tried to kill our president," Kabore added. "Someone from inside." "And why me?" "Because," Dio said, "if even one of Traoré's greatest enemies seeks justice, then the truth will be undeniable." Sankara studied their faces. Suspicion, desperation, fear. "I will do it," Sankara said finally, but not for him. For Burkina Faso. You will have full authority, Ouedraogo promised. Access to all records, cameras, personnel. Good, Sankara said. Then I want to see the president. The ministers exchanged wary glances, but relented. Under heavy security, Sankara entered the sterile hospital room. Ibrahim Traoré lay unconscious, machines beeping steadily around him. Pale, fragile. Sankara stood by the bed, arms crossed. I never liked you, he said quietly. When you ruined me, I wished for your downfall. But not like this. He leaned closer. It is more honorable to defeat an enemy face to face than poison him in the dark. Whoever did this, they dishonored us all. He glanced at the medical charts. Fast-acting, non-lethal poison. A message, not an execution. Sankara turned on his heel, determination burning in his chest. He would find the traitor, for justice, for honor, for Burkina Faso. And so, the reluctant ally entered the shadows of the palace once again, not as a conspirator, but as its last hope. Maurice Sankara wasted no time. By morning, the east wing of the presidential palace had been transformed into a makeshift investigation center. 2 former intelligence officers, men Sankara trusted, joined him. We start with the basics, Sankara said, unfurling a map of the palace. The food chain. Chef Bamana, a veteran of palace kitchens, was the first summoned. Mr. Bamana, Sankara began, his voice calm but firm. Explain how the president's meal is prepared. Hands trembling, Bamana spoke. We use ingredients only from the palace farm. Every batch is checked. Yesterday, I personally cooked the rice, fried chicken, and vegetables. And who delivered the plate to the president? Souli Main, sir. He's been with us 8 years, loyal. Where is Souli now? The chef hesitated. He's missing, sir. Didn't report for duty today. A tense silence followed. Find him immediately, Sankara ordered. Ouedraogo dispatched teams across Ouagadougou. Meanwhile, Sankara and his assistants combed Souli's quarters. They found little of value, except a hidden envelope stuffed with foreign currency. Evidence of bribery, muttered Sankara. Security footage from the past week revealed Souli meeting discreetly with someone in the palace gardens. The image, grainy but clear enough, showed Foreign Relations Advisor Hamidou Savado handing Souli a small envelope. Bring Savado in, Sankara said. Hamidou Savado sat stiffly in the interrogation room. Sankara paced before him. Explain why you gave Souli an envelope last Tuesday, Sankara said, sliding a still frame from the security video across the table. It was charity, Savado insisted. His mother is sick. 10,000 euros? Sankara arched an eyebrow. A generous gift. Cornered, Savado's facade began to crumble. Further investigation into his accounts revealed a recent 50,000 euro transfer from an overseas bank and a pending reservation at a Parisian hotel. You were preparing to flee, Sankara accused. Sweating, Savado finally broke. I was only a middleman, he confessed. It was Pierre Dumont, an official from the French Foreign Ministry. He offered collaboration and later ordered the poisoning. The room fell silent. The conspiracy was larger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Maurice Sankara tightened his grip on the evidence. The shadows within the palace had only begun to reveal themselves, and the storm ahead would test the very soul of Burkina Faso. The revelation of Pierre Dumont's involvement hit the core of the palace like a silent explosion. Trust was already thin. Now anger and fear laced every glance and whisper. Sankara gathered with Prime Minister Dio, Security Chief Ouedraogo, and Interior Minister Kabore in the war room, a fortified meeting chamber deep within the hospital. We can't arrest Dumont openly, Dio said. It would trigger a diplomatic crisis. But we can trap him, Sankara countered. We feed him false information. He outlined the plan. The government would leak news that President Traoré had died from the poisoning. Dumont, believing the operation a success, would step forward to push his agenda, exposing himself in the process. It's dangerous, Kabore warned. If word spreads uncontrollably, it could destabilize the country. We'll control the narrative, Sankara assured. Tight leaks to international media. Enough to reach Dumont, not enough to incite chaos. With grim nods, the ministers agreed. 2 days later, news outlets worldwide buzzed with headlines. Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré dies after poisoning attempt. Within hours, Dumont returned to Ouagadougou, his demeanor carefully composed, but his eyes gleaming with ambition. In the Prime Minister's office, Dio received him, Sankara seated quietly in the corner, observing.
On behalf of France, we extend our condolences, Dumont said solemnly. We are ready to assist Burkina Faso in this transitional period. Thank you, Mr. Dumont, Dio replied, masking his disdain. Please, let us discuss future cooperation. Dumont leaned forward eagerly, unaware of the net closing around him. Before we begin, Sankara said, his voice slicing through the room, there's something you should hear. He pressed a button. The room filled with Dumont's own voice, recorded during a secret phone call with Savado. Is Traoré really dead? Excellent. Now we can proceed. Dumont's face drained of color. This recording, Sankara continued coldly, along with other evidence, implicates you in the attempted assassination of our head of state. Guards moved in. Dumont tried to protest, but the proof was irrefutable. He was arrested and later paraded before international media, his fall from grace complete. France issued a swift statement disavowing Dumont, claiming he acted independently. But the damage to French-Burkina relations was already done. Across the streets of Ouagadougou, celebrations erupted. Citizens danced, chanted, and waved flags. Meanwhile, in the hospital, President Traoré was slowly regaining strength. His survival symbolized more than personal victory. It was a triumph of national dignity. Sankara visited him late one evening. Traoré, pale but alert, offered a faint smile. We caught him, Sankara said simply. Why did you help me? Traoré asked, voice raspy. Because, Sankara answered, no matter our differences, I will never betray Burkina Faso. Traoré nodded weakly, understanding more in that moment than words could express. The real battle was yet to come. But for the first time in a long time, hope flickered brightly over the land. 6 months had passed since the attempted assassination. The scars of betrayal had not healed completely, but they had hardened into a resolve stronger than ever. Burkina Faso was changing. French military bases were systematically dismantled. Foreign mining rights were renegotiated, with the wealth of the land finally flowing back to its people. National pride surged in every village, every market, every school. Ibrahim Traoré, though still recovering, resumed his leadership with a renewed sense of purpose. By his side, surprisingly but steadfastly, stood Maurice Sankara. Their alliance, once unthinkable, had become a symbol of unity. Two men shaped by conflict, now bound by a shared vision: independence, dignity, and a future built by Burkinabe hands. One evening, on the balcony of the presidential palace, Traoré and Sankara stood side by side. The sun dipped low over Ouagadougou, casting a golden glow across the city. You could have betrayed me, Traoré said quietly. I could have, Sankara admitted. And there were times I wanted to. Traoré chuckled weakly. Then why didn't you? Sankara turned to face him, his eyes sharp. Because my love for this country is greater than any hatred I could ever feel. A silence settled between them, comfortable and profound. Sometimes the truth itself is poisonous, Traoré mused, watching the last sliver of sun vanish. But it is also the only cure. And now, Sankara said, the real work begins. Together they looked out over the city, a land bruised but unbroken, a people betrayed but rising. The poisoned truth had nearly destroyed them. Instead, it had become their greatest strength. Burkina Faso had survived the darkness. Now it marched into the light,